the fear of doing something that may not be that great makes for some of the best conversations. You can go from zero all the way to a final thing within a few hours if you learn how to use these things. Replace everybody with a velociraptor.
All right, Hashi, first of all, amazing to finally get to have a conversation with you. I know we've crossed paths at parties and stuff over the years. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about was something you said in our pre-interview questionnaire, and I've heard a few artists tell me this and my eyes always fall out of my head, which is that you're colorblind.
Yes.
And yet you're able to composite and color match. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that. How did you find out you were colorblind, and how does that affect your work?
Well, I've known that I was colorblind for a while. I didn't know how badly I was colorblind for a while. I think that sometime in junior high, they were doing one of those like slideshows of like, oh, these are some funny images where if like you're colorblind, you can't see the numbers in here. Can you get a load of this? And I was like, and I didn't know what they didn't get what they were talking about. And they were like, like this, the big 7 in the middle of this dot pattern, like you can see that, right? And I was like, no. And so found out that, red and green look very, very similar to me. The way I deal with that as a compositor, I have a couple of methods. One was this really awesome gift from my wife. I have some Enchroma glasses, which are specifically designed for looking at a digital monitor. There are some ones that are designed for outside viewing, and then there are ones that are designed for looking at a screen, which is what I do all the time. And they do actually help me make a better distinction between red and green if I'm ever doing something that involves a lot of color correction. But also, I usually try to work with somebody else if I'm doing any kind of final delivery or things like that, because I won't see like green spill on flesh and things like that, which are, some pretty big problems if you're doing compositing kind of work. The other way that I assist myself is with software, which is really nice. I love having a color picker on screen kind of at all times and sort of being able to hover the mouse over things and figuring out, like I've sort of learned over time, like this combination of RGB is skin tone, and if not, you're out of the range. And another surprising tip that Aaron Rabinowitz got me onto was in Colorista, you can do a skin overlay, which is really cool. So you can, if you're doing some color correction with Colorista, you can just check this little box and it'll put a little grid over whatever is properly falling into like a wide variety of standard flesh tones and what is like leaning purple and what is leaning green or something like that. And so that's been a super helpful tool as well. And
So you make it work. Well, I was going to ask because I interviewed an artist years ago named Kevin Dart, who's this like brilliant illustrator, designer, and he's colorblind too. And he told me that the way he kind of deals with it, which I thought would probably be useful for a compositor, is he tends to work in grayscale and focus more on value than on the hue and saturation a little bit. And I actually learned. I know Mark Christensen, our VFX for Motion instructor, interviewed you for that course. And one of the things he teaches in that course, which I think was also in his book he wrote, decades ago, is how you can sort of color correct. If you're trying to match a foreground plate and a background plate, you can color correct one channel at a time and kind of get them to look right, white in black and white. And then you turn the color back on and they're pretty close. Do you do stuff like that? Do you rely on grayscale?
I've done some things like that. The other thing that's sort of similar is I can do like a hue shift on the whole image, which is not quite like, grayscale, but if I hue shift everything one way or the other, sometimes you can see like, oh, this is like, now there's a really clear difference between these two objects. Yeah. Or when you hue shifted, your flesh went one direction and the skin tone of stuff in the plate like vary. And so I'm like, I'm wrong here. And so. Got it.
That's really smart.
But yeah, it's amazing, and also I know that it's a handicap to some degree, so I do love just relying on I'm always working with people, so people
let the supervisor kind of put their eyes on it. Well, that's awesome, man. I love hearing stuff like that because there's a lot of excuses people can make for not being able to do a certain thing, and it's like compositing, and you're amazing at it. It like the hardest thing is to get two things to look like they belong together, So I think that's awesome that you figured out your way around that.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, so I want to dig into your history a little bit. I think a lot of people watching this are going to be familiar with you, probably more recently from the Red Giant stuff, VFX and Chill, and the content you've put out there, some of your tutorials. And maybe some people will remember, when you were doing the action movie kid stuff. Yeah. But now I want to go back even further. So you had a career before that, right? Like you were a visual effects artist working on movies. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. How did you get into that? And, what kind of work were you doing?
Totally. Well, I worked at DreamWorks Animation for 10 years immediately following school, which was really, really cool. And while I was working there, I was also freelancing to do things like graphics for TV shows, for a lot of them for like cable TV, for like Bravo's 100 Greatest TV Characters or something like that. I think The Kid Stays in the Picture had just came out, and being able to do multiplanes was a huge deal at the time, because you had I would literally scan photographs and then do all of the separation and clone stamping and stuff like that in Photoshop, and then
it was a new technique at the time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, people went bonkers for it, and so I started out kind of like doing this, like 1 foot in freelance visual effects, and my full-time day job was working at DreamWorks in the story department, and then eventually in the story and editorial department, and then eventually that worked its way into becoming the After Effects department that I was the head of there, where we were using After Effects to animate sequences on Kung Fu Panda, in a good handful of the credit sequence or stylized sequences from the movie. And what's really cool about working in animation is it's a very small world, and so you get to work really closely and directly with a lot of people who are super famous or have done really remarkable things, and it's a really quick way to humble yourself and also see that these people kind of made like the director of Beauty and the Beast, or like this person's won an Oscar, and they're trying to throw together this craft with as many artists as they can get on board, and it was really, really fun. So did that for 10-ish years before kind of separating from that to do the YouTube channel.
Yeah. So I want to ask about the After Effects part of that. And, you're making me think, like, my impression, and I've never worked on a feature film, but my impression is that, to this day, if you're doing visual effects on a feature film and there's live action plates and stuff like that, you're probably using Nuke. I know you can use After Effects, and Mark, who I mentioned already, famously worked on, I think, The Day After Tomorrow, and a lot of that with Stu Maschwitz, and a lot of that was After Effects. But it seems like Nuke is still sort of like the most widely used tool. Totally. Is it different on animated films, or because I know there's still a fair amount of compositing on those as well? Was it Definitely. Weird that you guys were using After Effects?
It's always a fight, I think, at any studio to get to use After Effects, because it does get relegated to like, oh no, that's like one of those home ones that like you can use on your computer. It's not like right. It's not a studio pipeline tool, and so a lot of the process of me working at DreamWorks was proving that After Effects could fit into a pipeline, and I was fortunate enough to work with really great engineer there who helped us, write a handful of tools for After Effects that helped it fit into the pipeline and to be able to pull in images from all over the network and kind of distribute them back to the network when we rendered them. We set up a render farm of 20 machines with After Effects, and specifically with Red Giant licenses, because we used a lot of Trapcode Particular. This is actually what ended up leading me to get in personal contact with Aaron Rabinowitz, because I had watched his tutorials for years. And at some point when we were setting up this render farm with 20 Particular machines, I was like, I should write Aaron and say, love your stuff, man, basically.
Yeah, and you got some licenses lying around for the farm?
So that was pretty fun. But After Effects is a tool that can really like rise to meet the occasion of really bizarre stuff. It's probably been said on this show before, and like Victoria from Adobe says this often. I can't remember who originally said it, but that like After Effects is designed to do things that it wasn't designed to do, and that was a thing that we were constantly trying to prove. Like we can work with feature length things, and in animation in particular, we had not particular, but in, specifically animation, a lot of the artwork was being generated in Photoshop layers and things like that. And while you could assemble things like this in Nuke, and I worked a bit in Nuke while I was at DreamWorks, but it didn't have the traditional keyframing kind of pipeline that animators responded to well, and wasn't as quick at trying to update layers and things like that from an artist being able to paint right into the Photoshop document, and then we would take it and multiplane it and animate things over it and stuff like that. And so animation was uniquely tailored to it, but I did end up getting to use it on a handful of other live action films. I used it for Mary Poppins Returns and for a handful of other things, but you really just have to prove that you can do it.
Yeah, so I think the listeners of this show are going to be really familiar with like all the capabilities of After Effects, and so I think especially if you know it well, you can see how it can do, I don't know, let's call it 90% of the things Nuke can do as far as compositing goes. But you mentioned pipeline, and I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and it probably means different things in different contexts. So in the context of DreamWorks Animation Studio, what were the supervisors or whoever was thinking After Effects as a toy, which was something I always heard early in my career? What were they worried about it not being able to do that something like Nuke can do? Like, how does it actually become a potential blocker to a studio pipeline?
I think that After Effects is definitely tailored toward like the individualized experience. It's this workhorse program where you can open up a million different options, do a million different things, but most people have sort of set up their machine to do specific things, or they have a collection of plugins and things like that. And unless you have someone on top of curating that for a whole studio worth of people, it can become very challenging, or the licensing can become a little bit difficult. Whereas Nuke, it happens to be very good at a node structure and a handful of things where you can import assets from one department, layer them up the way that they are rendered, and then spit them out on the other side in a very quick and efficient manner. And it is fantastic at doing that. I find, especially back in like kind of 2005 to 2015, Nuke wasn't as robust at creating a wholesale shot where you wanted to take artwork, multiplane it, add particles falling in reaction to that camera. And in fact, we were rendering everything in stereo, which Nuke handles as well, but it only kind of handles them as a left-right image. It's not unless you're getting into the projection and things like that it could do in those years. You wouldn't build an animated shot in it. And so the difference in that DreamWorks pipeline, and I think it could apply anywhere, is that Nuke is really fantastic at layering up render passes and doing a handful of digital set extensions with a little bit of limited 3D, but I don't feel like it has a great handle on keyframing effects and animating things around with the traditional delightful, controls and things like that. And so I do think that it's just about, it's a little bit about file handling and a little bit about capability that I've lost myself in the question.
Yeah, this is good. The train's kind of coming off the tracks. No, I think you answered it. I mean, in my limited experience, it was clear that Nuke, it reminds me in a way of Houdini, where it can do almost anything, but some of those things that you want it to do, you're going to have to get in there and make a script. And some of the studios that I've worked with that use Nuke, they have this whole library of custom scripts that they've written and that they automatically get deployed when they add another Nuke license and all that kind of stuff. And I get what you're saying with After Effects. There's so many tools that artists use. And Red Giant actually, is like a real company with, real licensing and stuff like that. But you might also use a tool that's made by one person that hasn't been updated in 2 years, and everyone needs a copy of that now. And yeah, it does get squirrely. So I'm sure when you got there and you started working around, these amazing artists and probably a lot of really good compositors, what did you learn about what makes someone a good compositor? Because I think sometimes it's a little bit harder to tell. Like if someone animates something and it feels good, you're like, oh, you did a good job. But how do you know if someone composited well?
What you said is actually kind of true. I think that there's something about a good compositor where if you watch their shot, it depends. If you're talking about animation, the shot is the shot is captivating and you're invested in just the shot. If it's a visual effects shot, it's that you watch it and kind of perceive no edges or anything like that. You perceive what is supposed to be happening in the shot first. And so if you're a good compositor, if you show somebody a shot that you've composited together, if it just reads as one shot that all happened at the same time and is occurring at that moment, without you questioning that's not what it would look like if this were to happen, even if it's outlandish. That's a very big point for me when I'm watching any visual effect, where if it's executed well, it almost it's sort of like the way bad visual effects stand out a lot more than super competent, really good compositing on something. It almost becomes invisible when it's something where you're doing digital set extensions and the like. And if it is, fantastical or, adding additional elements into the scene, is it something that you believe would happen in that world? Or does it, match the visual language of that film pretty well? So I think almost the less you perceive it as a magic trick, the better the composite works. And that can, boil down to a whole host of things.
Yeah, it's a little bit esoteric. Are there, this just popped into my head, but I want to ask you, can you remember the last time you saw a visual effect and you didn't know how it was done?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's definitely hard to turn off, the visual effects side of my brain, but I would bet, goodness, yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I saw recently that I was like, how could they have possibly done that? And the other challenge to that is knowing that nowadays you could have digitally built everything and I would have had no idea that it was done digitally, because the tools are very, very good.
The stuff that gets me is the de-aging stuff. There's some stuff from some of the Avengers movies where they made actors look really skinny or a younger, older version of themselves. And sometimes it's done horribly, and sometimes you're like there's a scene, I can't remember which movie, but Robert Downey Jr. is really skinny, he just got back from space or something. And I watched that scene now, and I'm like, I can't possibly imagine how that was done because it looks so clean. I'm sure you know how it's done, but
oh, no, absolutely. Maybe in the Martian that there's a great shot of Matt Damon coming out of something, and you see his emaciated body, and you're like, oh God, yeah, some of that kind of stuff is phenomenal to see. But I do always, enjoy watching the tentpole visual effects movies that come out each year and kind of see what they've done that is challenging. I know that Corridor Digital did a great deep dive into that shot in Avatar that is, two hands tying a leather strap in shallow water. That I think everybody knows the shot that just blurs the lines so much of what we know you could digitally recreate and what just looks perfect, and you wouldn't really know it. And so sometimes little shots like that are the most fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. So what are some things that, maybe these are bad habits you had, or maybe they're just bad habits you see, junior compositors come in with, and you want to be like, no, stop doing that right away. What are some things that you would, advice you'd give to become a better compositor right away? Don't do this, or here's a common mistake I see.
I'm guilty of all of these, especially as I was getting into everything. One of the very first things that I did not understand was black levels and white levels, just at the very base level of stuff, to double check that if you're adding something into the shot, that the dark values aren't darker than the darkest values in the footage. And same thing for the highlights and the way they bloom. I also was very guilty of just throwing a fire stock image on top of everything and setting it to an additive blending mode, and just believing that'll be fine without considering, what else it's supposed to be doing. And, it's all fun, but I think, having studied, it's good to study either visual effect shots that you love or to study just classic photography and movies that you like. So if you're watching a shot and trying to composite it together, things just look wrong when they're an obvious composite because they don't pass the smell test of something that might have occurred. And I think that's basically it. So yeah, starting with like levels is a huge one. Making things glow too bright on top of standard footage, or making it so your CG element like has the full dynamic range all the way to like dark black shadows, and your footage doesn't. It has slightly grayish blue shadows or something like that. So
yeah, how much of that, because I've done compositing and I've watched a million tutorials on it, and it feels like some compositors almost take a mathematical approach, and they'll literally zoom into the pixel and find the darkest pixel so they know that that's the black level. I mean, how precise do you really need to be when you're doing color matching like that? Do you think you can kind of eyeball it after a while, or should you always trust the scopes and do that kind of thing?
I do a lot of pretty quick, color picker kind of selections, and instead of diving in real deep to make sure that it's matching. So like unless I really, really know it's going to be important, or I'm exporting it at a full dynamic range or something like that. If I know that I'm producing something for YouTube to be watched on mobile screens, then I'm like, color picker, your first instinct that looks okay to you is probably fine. And even knowing that, I'm still armed with great, color matching tools and level setters and like automatic grabbing things from whether they're from Magic Bullet or Inside Super Comp and things like that. I love using color matching tools as a quick like one-click solution to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, one of the tips that I got early, which was really helpful to me, I'm curious if you think this still applies given how like technology's progressed, but was that when I would key something, I would generally try to get it in one key instead of breaking it up and doing the hair separately and a core mat and an edge mat and all these things, which generally gives you a much better result. And so anyone listening who you haven't keyed a lot, try to break it up into different pieces. Don't just do it all in one keyer. But I'm curious because, I still use Keylight when on the odd occasion I have to key something now, but there's a lot of other keyers. There's newer ones. There's these machine learning assisted ones. So do you think that advice still applies?
I think that it is very healthy for you to practice with whatever keying software you use to try to break it and figure out, like if one part of your key isn't working, why doesn't it work? Is there a way that you could make it work better? And it's probably 15 years old at this point, and a tutorial by Arn Rabinowitz that's called super tight garbage mats. That whatever keying software you use, you can just punch out the green broadly, choke in your mat and then choke it out a little bit, and so you have your character in a little bubble of green around them. And now you've minimized the green dynamic range of what you're keying the green out from. Instead of keying all of this shadowy green up here, you're just dealing with a really tight bit around the head. Or if you're someone like me who's tried to key their own spiky hair against something like that, it hates spill and stuff like that. But
you get no sympathy for me on that, Hashi. I'm sorry.
You went for the easy to key. You go in there and you're like, I need to be easy to key after this. And
I'm like an HDR eyeball. So
amazing. But I absolutely. I mean, maybe biased, but I love working with Primat Keyer because I find like in terms of its one-click guess is often really, really close. And it has a lot of tools to dial it in beyond that. I also love what it does for color preservation and ways that you can get a really clean alpha matte out of it. Keylight can work in a pinch, but I feel like it's better as a matte generator, but it's destructive to your footage. And so it just depends on what you're doing. But it's a really good lesson to break up the person into regions. If you can key the shirt really easily, but the flesh is having some trouble, just keep your great shirt key and then start dialing in on just the skin. Don't worry about breaking the part that works just to try to get it all into one.
Yeah, there's a lot of good tips in there. I like that. All right, so let's move forward in time. So you're at DreamWorks, and then something happens, yada, 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 and all of a sudden you're like this YouTube sensation. So what's the story of Action Movie Kid?
Goodness gracious. So, we had, our first kid. I'd met my wife, Mandy, at DreamWorks. She worked in the art department on the Bee Movie and introduced me to Alex McDowell, the production designer, who helped make me more of an artist there, which was really cool. And so my wife and I have always been working on cool creative projects together. And so once we had kids, it was very natural that, at the time, like, you'd share videos of them doing stuff with relatives and putting them online and stuff. And I love just doing and experimenting with different effects and things like that. And so I thought it would be funny if, I think honestly at the time, if I filled my Facebook feed with videos of our kids doing this stuff that was super dangerous, specifically just to share with my family, make them laugh and things like that. My parents weren't on Facebook at the time, and so I ended up putting them all on a YouTube channel and literally emailing them the YouTube links to watch these videos, because we weren't in the habit of texting videos in 2010 the way that we are now. And so this, or 2014, I guess, is when this actually was. But for whatever reason, we very hastily created a YouTube channel and didn't know what to call it, and so came up with Action Movie Kids and posted a few videos that were silly visual effect things of, like Jamie diving into a pool of water at a Home Depot and disappearing into it, or playing with a toy lightsaber in a Toys R Us. And we had this amazing and almost instant feedback of they had been posted for a month, and about literally 1 month in, suddenly someone had shared the wet floor one on Reddit, and it made it to the front page of Reddit. And by the end of that day, 1 million people had come to see it. And we had these requests to be on Good Morning America at the end of that week. And we had 6 videos or something like that on it. And they're all cute and fun, but they weren't designed with any branding or anything like that around them. And so we had this astronomical success for online video, which was really, really cool. The video of Jamie with a lightsaber in Toys R Us ended up being so popular that Toys R Us asked me to direct an ad campaign. And so all of these offers for our family as these digital creators started kind of coming in, and I was trying to balance them with the full-time job at DreamWorks. And then at some point there were so many requests and so much opportunity to do things that my wife and I talked things over. We talked with an agent. We got representation through UTA at the time, and they were phenomenal at figuring out opportunities for us at the time. It was a very golden age for, you have a cool YouTube channel that's doing stuff, and there's a lot of people willing to pay you to do that. And so eventually we found out that we would be okay not having my full-time day job and things like that, and leaned into doing this YouTube channel full-time, where we would just, put out a video every week or couple of weeks. A lot of the time, my wife would direct the kids into some kind of playtime, and then at the end, I would she'd either be off screen, or I'd replace her with some digital element or something like that, or a dinosaur or whatever, or a shark. And it was a really fun and bizarre way to wander into parenthood.
Now, were these offers coming in, brands saying, I want you to, basically create a commercial in the style of what you're doing, but we're going to hire professional actors to be the kids and stuff like that? Or were they asking for your kids? Because now your kids have been kind of visible, on YouTube. Oh, yeah. It
was a combination of both. For Toys R Us was, I think, the biggest endeavor, because we made 50 commercial spots for them by the end.
Oh, my God.
I can't believe by the end. But it was so for that case, it was we had auditioned 1,000 kids and came up with kids that were good at engaging in play more than actors per se, because I think that some of the charm came from the fact that these videos with the kids, they're not acting, they're playing. And that was a really important thing for my wife especially, is that like we don't want to be, we're not a studio parent or whatever,
Right.
Stage parent kind of people. And we were like, these are fun if they are playing a game with us, and they're totally sad if they're being asked to do something.
Right.
And so to answer your question, we would do a combination of things. For Toys R Us, we got to work with a bunch of other kids, and the goal was to do the same kind of thing, to try to recreate a funny experience that we were trying to assure people, we promise this will be really cool when we add visual effects to it. And we promise it will be more convincing if it is handheld and a little bit of a looser style and looks a little bit less produced. People will find it more charming. And luckily they went for it. It was really, really cool. So Jamie got to star in one of those. And on our channel itself, the kids did a handful of promoted spots. But for all of them, we would tell the company we were working with that basically our process works that we'll like come up with a game to play with the kids. If they don't like it, first of all, the footage is going to be garbage anyway. Our performances are going to be garbage. So we're going to improvise and figure out something that is along these lines that uses your thing, but it'll depend a lot on what the kids respond to.
Yeah. So, I've talked to a few content creators. I don't know if you ever saw yourself as that, but these are people that you'd probably recognize their names, and they make really cool animations, and then they've gotten brand deals out of it. And they've all said some version of this, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, that like a lot of times you start doing this because it's fun, you have some idea, you want to express it, you put it out there, people like it, it feels good, and then something changes the second someone hands you $1 and says, now do it for me. How did that change the experience of actually doing this?
It was something that we were like suddenly thrown into this kind of influencer pool, which was interesting at the time. And so it was really fun because we got to be friends with Zach King and Matt Pat and met the Corridor Digital guys and stuff like that at the time. And they were all doing their thing. And the other thing is that they were all like 15 years younger than we were and at a different stage of life. And so I think the thing that I'm really thankful for my wife being the mature one in our relationship around for was that we were able to gain some perspective on this is weird, first of all. It's a fun hobby that we're doing and we like it. But if we're going to, commercially lean into it, it will certainly eat away a little bit at our souls and at our kids' souls. So what could we do to try to make it the best experience possible? And our agents at UTA were really wonderful. They were very upfront about what types of things we wanted to do. We did not love doing any kind of scripted thing. If there was any kind of copy or stuff that you had to say, like Lame Dad would take that and leave the kids out of it to just sort of appear in the fun bit of something. And so we kind of tried figuring out a balance to figure out how to not completely dive into influencer mode, which I think that we never pulled off very well. Captain Disillusion has a wonderful video about a kid, like YouTube Kids, something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it has I didn't know him at the time. And so it has a very perfect portrait of what the history of us existing on the space was. Like, it was a very genuine attempt originally and a lot of fun and, imaginative videos, but like as more and more brand deals came in, it was clear that, it was less appealing to people for the, reasons that we started it out with. And it sort of wound down from there.
Yeah, you made an interesting point earlier that, I remember seeing the lightsaber in Toys R Us video at some point in my career and thinking, oh, that's so great. And it was really well done. Like, the tracking was good. I'm sure you notice all the flaws, but I was blown away by it. But there is something, it's shot on like a phone. The footage isn't lit really beautifully. It's wobbly. And the effects are good, but you can tell they're effects. They weren't trying to look like a Star Wars film. Did that have to change once you started having bigger brands come? Did you find that the production value had to elevate, or they weren't happy, or did they kind of get it, every time you deliver something? Before Hashi answers that, you might be thinking that all of this VFX stuff sounds like a lot of fun to learn. Well, lucky for you, School of Motion offers the most in-depth and fun VFX class for After Effects artists on the planet, VFX for Motion. In this 12-week guided session, you'll learn everything from the basics of compositing to advanced roto techniques, tracking, match moving, keying, and much more. We produced a full-scale shoot to capture all of the video assets for the course, and every lesson is built around a real-world project that you can complete to test your new skills and beef up your portfolio. VFX legend Mark Christensen teaches the course, and it's a blast, in addition to being a really effective way to learn visual effects. Upcoming session dates are at the link in the description. We hope to see you in class. And now back to Hashi.
It was a bit of a mix. A handful of them, if we were working with an IP, like if we were working with, we had like a thing that we did with like Captain America's shield or something like that. They would have some real standards for how it looked, how it behaved, etc. We did some spots with Disney where Jamie has a lightsaber fight with Darth Vader. And there's a whole list of Lucasfilm rules and a whole list of Disney rules for what you do with them, how the visuals look, and how it's presented. And so it was. I think that that I was probably harder on myself in terms of how far I needed to push the visual effects, because in the end, like I'd mentioned before, these are going to be viewed on someone's phone, and just need to like make them smile a bit because they're kind of fun. So I would imagine that the pressure came more from myself, just wanting to like challenge myself, like, oh, I want to add a simulation into this one. Oh, I want to add cloth into this one, or I want to do, interactive fire or lighting in this one that is, just a step above the improvised ones where they were filmed, I think, like on an iPhone 4 at the time, handheld. But we did try to stick to the idea of handheld, and which is always easy to track, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, to some degree. We called it like Dad's like Tai Chi filming, which was handheld but deliberately smooth enough that I was getting a lot of parallax for tracking, and I think it shows. But yeah, I don't think there was as much pressure from the clients as I think there was.
Was there a moment, because you still make a lot of cool content, and I think sometimes your kids are still in it, but I mean you're constantly like experimenting and making stuff. Is that still part of your life, doing these brand deals and having an agent, or did you sort of leave that behind at some point?
Well, we moved to Canada about 2 years ago, and at the time we had wound down a lot of our like longer contracts and deals with people to be doing the YouTube channel full time. And so we didn't specifically say that we were retiring the channel or anything like that, but it certainly wound down. Kids are getting older and have their own interesting things they want to do. And so we have a backlog of old episodes that, I may dust off at some point. We have like over 100 shot that I haven't done effects for, just because either like something came up that was cooler later, or we realized, oh, there's probably a better way to do this later. But, one day maybe like Dad will like dust off these videos and do a whole bunch more. But for right now, I feel like we were pretty dormant in general.
I like it until the reunion tour happens in 20 years. So one of the things I really like about your tutorials is you have that sort of Andrew Kramer brain where you can sort of see how I could cobble together these 6 things in this weird way to get this effect. And you're also like constantly trying new tools, which I think is awesome. Mm-hmm. And the newest tool that everyone likes to talk about is AI. And so I'm curious, I'm just going to start by just asking you what your take is on AI. I know everybody has a take these days. I certainly do. But I'm curious, like what's your current thinking on it?
So yeah, my current thinking, I think, has stayed consistent over the rise of the machines. I think that AI is a very fascinating tool that is really worth educating yourself on. It's very clear that the visual capabilities of it are increasing with every iteration, and there are more and more things that it can do that are more and more impressive or more and more directable. And so there are sort of two thoughts that I have to kind of hold with cognitive, dissonance about the whole thing, which is no model has kind of come out and been proven to be, very ethically sourced. They're all, guilty of some form of scraping or, disingenuous gathering of data and visual information that was created by artists meaningfully for a reason. And so I think that the only thing that can be done with a product that is doing something like that is for new artists to figure out how to take the weird and varied abilities of AI and be able to use them as one of the many tools in their arsenal to tell something that is also unique and interesting with them. So, I find it fascinating that Runway has a new video-to-video model, and you can see people, moving around cardboard boxes and turning them into spaceships and things like that. It's this really cool open box dream scenario for people who have never really worked with visual effects or never worked creatively to do something. But there's as impressive as the visuals get, I still think that you either need artistic reasoning or grounding to make them anything that anyone is going to want to share or enjoy. I think the idea that we can generate all this cool content for free and it'll be custom and you can generate whatever you want misses the fundamental point of why, a YouTube channel is charming, or why a movie is cool, or why this animated film, had meaning behind it, or why it stayed around, like whether or not you can recreate the, cut out animated paper style of something like that, because all of its images have been scraped and you can, force something into the same style. But I think that it's a really neat tool. I think that it's really worth, if you're an artist in the community, be aware of what the tools do, what their capabilities are, especially because I think there will be a whole generation of young kids who are coming into the world who this is their base. This is something they have available to them, and kind of like ethics of it be damned, they're creating something different because they actually have something they want to express, and they're going to make the tool do that. So if you're using the tool to generate the content, it's wrong. But if you have content that you're using it as a tool to generate, neat.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. One of my theories on this, and I feel like the vibe has been shifting a little bit lately, where like when the stuff started to come out, like maybe 2 years ago, there was an almost instant backlash against it, for understandable reason. And it seems like it's died down. And I feel like there's kind of, you put it really well, you got to hold these two competing thoughts in your head. On the one hand, especially as a visual effects artist, these tools are very, very, very practically useful. Like if you're, a matte painter or something like that, I don't see how you could not use these tools, at the very least, to generate assets that you then cut out and manipulate and do other things with, which is typically how we use them. On the other hand, there does seem to be this unethical source of the power that these tools have, at least with some of the the models, and those things. Have you felt sort of one of those thoughts, lessen and one get stronger? Has your view changed over the last 2 years?
It's interesting because I feel like the landscape of AI is almost distinctly ignoring it and just kind of hoping to wear everybody down.
Well, the companies are for sure, yeah.
and I do understand that in a way. And actually, Beeple recently made some comment that he put in a very eloquent Beeple kind of way,
as only he can, right?
Which was something like boo-hoo, you have like your toenail that is yours or whatever, and you toss it into the ocean now,
right? And
you want to say, you can't use that ocean, my toenail's in it. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, that's pretty close actually to what he said.
But I think that it is a good point to say, there's the, devil's advocate argument that all art is, is stealing or being inspired by or doing something else with. And so I think that what I hope happens with AI is that people who are really distinctly leaning into the fact that it is stealing the aesthetic of other people and trying to recreate things they have seen before are going to find far less success than people who are out there who have something to say and stumble upon this tool as a way to say it.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think about this too. So it feels like, whether it's Midjourney, which was trained on, work scraped from ArtStation and a million other places, and it makes imagery, right? And there's something kind of visceral about that. But then you've got, Boris FX just announced some new tool for silhouette. It's like they don't use the term AI, they use machine learning. They've kind of learned to put ML instead of AI in front of it.
Safe. Safe.
Yeah, but it's like a matte generation tool, kind of like, Runway's tool. You put a dot on something and it kind of guesses what the matte should be, right? And I'm assuming that is trained on a whole bunch of, mattes or, I don't know where they get the data from, but it's from artists. But no one seems to get mad about that. People get mad about the things that make images. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
It is fascinating because, it supports my thought where AI or machine learning algorithms will be really, really great as a tool in a creative pipeline. I have no doubt that within a year or two, you'll be able to key or separate or create depth maps for things that are just incredible and have very high fidelity. And those are some tools that were always tedious in visual effects. And so there's something assistive about that feels really wonderful because it's sort of like, well, I could have rotoed this whole thing. But the fact that I don't have to do that boring part is cool because then I can get right to the creative stuff. And in a lot of the tutorials I do for Red Giant, Cheap Trick series, a lot of like the kind of the mentality I had for that is like, what is the easiest way to do it? Because the faster you can get to the creative putting your image together part, the more you get to start iterating and being creative and things like that. And so having a matte for something would be amazing. Having a temporally consistent depth map, it would be amazing for all these kinds of compositing opportunities and for stereography and for generating a lot of stuff. And so I think that it is very likely that we'll see some really, really great dialed-in tools that rely on machine learning. And if for whatever reason, because they're not the thing putting the pixels on screen, it's a good degree of separation from us believing that, so what if they were trained on a whole bunch of stock videos that we can't even see? It was just so they could learn what a person's outline looked like. And so, maybe that leads to a slippery slope. But I feel like there's a real separation of what's putting the image on screen, maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good. I love the word assistive because I've been kind of grappling with this myself, trying to figure out, okay, what is the first principle I point to when I have an opinion on this? And it's hard to figure out. And you were making me think of maybe a metaphor is if you go to a 5-star restaurant, you probably don't care if a robot chopped the onions, but you probably would care if the robot plated it and actually prepared the dish. It's like the prep work feels separate somehow from the final thing you're delivering. And that's where I feel like artists tend to get a little bit territorial. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the initial, this is just my opinion, but I think a lot of the initial backlash against it was that sort of, and here's another thing, actually, let me ask you this. There is something about, especially, this, to become a good compositor, you have to know not just 10 big things. You got to know those, and you got to know 500 little tricks that the only way to learn is to run headfirst into it, and then you figure it out or someone tells you the answer. And so then when you get to a level where you're at, where you can, it's rare that you see a visual effect and don't know how they did it. There's a pride in that, right? And, and you worked really hard to gain those skills and be able to do what you do. And now all of a sudden, my 9-year-old son could get on Runway and type in, a robot shooting lasers out of his mouth. And there it is, right? And he didn't have to learn After Effects or any of that stuff. And so do you think that that's part of it too? There's our ego gets tied up in how hard it's been historically to get good at this.
Oh, certainly. Ego is a humongous part of why, there's the backlash. And what I think time will prove is that, we had a YouTube channel where it was a lot of work to make each little visual effects video. They were all handheld. They were all actually surprisingly long, single takes. Like they're all like 10 to 20 seconds, needed to be 3D tracked the whole time and rotoed, and all of this groundwork that I would have loved to have, a cheat code to do. And so if we're to the point where you could just type in a kid waving a lightsaber in the store and it can generate something pretty convincing as a meme, bring it on, I guess, because I think that we'll very quickly realize who has a creative spark to do something neat with it and who will just learn how to replicate things that they have seen. And so I think that'll be the big deciding factor is, if this tool is available to everyone, so be it. I think it's great. I love having more people being able to be more creative and doing different things. I love seeing people who use AI, like the least ethical AI ever to do something interesting. There are very few of them. There are 4 billion slow motion, dumb, fake movie trailer generated things that are
with the same voiceover model.
I'm calling you out. They're pure garbage. 95% of them are pure garbage, slow-mo, weird, not cinematic shots. And if you think that it's really cool, I don't know. I don't think that any of them will have a lasting effect.
No, I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah, I mean, I have seen, there was one that came out probably last year where I think someone generated the artwork in Midjourney, but then they actually rigged and animated it, and they were character animators, and they thought about the script, and they hired voice actors to make these cute voices, and I mean, it would still take a ton of work. And this gets to my next question, which is, what AI companies would like us to believe, and what they're selling, and the reason that we've been in this AI bubble where it's like infinite dollars going into these companies, is that the promise is, one day you'll be able to describe the shot you want and you'll have a feature film quality 4K shot. You want film grain? We can do film grain too in the model, right? And, I've never worked on a feature film, but I've worked on plenty of commercials and even on a national spot, which is far less scrutinized than a feature film. The level of, there's that term pixel effing, like the level of just scrutiny on each shot and each pixel is really, really high. And so you have to have the control. You have to have some ability to manipulate everything down to the nth degree. And the models currently are nowhere near that. And so what I've been saying is my thesis is that to do professional work, the quality can't be 90% good enough for most things. It's got to be at least, let's call it 98%. But there's kind of this like power law where like the more powerful the AIs get, it doesn't scale linearly, right? So it may actually take a long time for them to get all the way there. Do you kind of agree with that? Do you think that they're cool and they can do amazing things, but the control's not there? Or maybe am I overselling how much control you really need?
Oh no, I absolutely agree with that. I think as it stands, and I know that they get better and better, and you get more and more control and things like that. But if there are producers out there who just made an animated film and they heard that you can generate all these things with AI and don't want to hire a full staff that they know it takes to make a movie, go for it. Hire 6 AI bros to try to make an animated film.
Yeah.
Let a production designer see any of their work and see if they make it past one round of notes. It just doesn't, I feel like it doesn't compute. And I don't mean to tie up ego or anything into that, but it's more to tie in intention and artistic expression. There are so many people working on these creative projects because they all have something to say and they're all coordinating and moving together in one direction to tell something. And if you don't have that fine degree of control to bring everything into alignment with the vision for the whole project, and you can't respond, in some granular way to like a director's notes or to something, then you suddenly find yourself creating more positions that would be like, well, they really liked this part of the generation that I did earlier, but they like the background in this other generation. So what we need is some compositors who are good at taking all of these elements and mixing them together, and then suddenly you're backward sliding Like the South Park episode Cartman Land, into realizing you think that you can have this whole theme park to yourself, and then you realize, crap, I need someone to buy tickets, and crap, I need someone to sell them the tickets. And it'll I think that it would slowly, you'll end up in the situation where you realize, I just need to coordinate artists to work together to make things whether or not they're using AI.
Yeah, I mean, you worked on Kung Fu Panda, and I'm sure you sat through dailies where, the director or the animation director would say, like, make his ear flick in a quirky way for 4 frames right there, because it's an emotional beat. And, that's the level of control. And you can do that, and it's not quite right. Get in there and tweak the curves. And that's the level of control you actually need. And if you have that much control, the intention is really what matters, and your skill in wielding it. So I don't know. I'm skeptical that AI, even in principle, can replace a human's ability to do that. Maybe the technology gets to where, like, you don't have to render it. Maybe you describe it in some way, and then you get the images, but you're still controlling it. And that's, I don't know. There's not a question there. I just want to throw that at you because that's kind of, I could see that feels like where it's going.
And rendering is a whole other interesting thing you can do. I mean, I know that there are some pipelines out there right now where you can use your low poly, flat shaded version of something like viewport export, and then convert it to looking like a more commercial shot or something like that. And maybe at some point we will develop, character hierarchies and, AI assisted rendering and lighting and things like that, where they're all very character specific and they're all very tailored and designed. But again, you start bloating back into the idea of, like, well, you need someone who is caring for how this character looks, what their consistency is through a whole feature film or through a whole, commercial project or something like that. But you might find that out there in the YouTube world, there are a bunch of, like, young creators who can use these tools that just need it to be 90% good, because the ones of them that are the best at telling stories or make the most captivating concepts that people haven't seen before will quickly rise to the top in a sea of slow-mo AI footage.
Yeah, we talked about the runway video to video model that was released, at the time of this recording, I think it was like a week ago or something like that. And that one's interesting to me because now, and I've actually seen some examples where someone took a Cinema 4D play blast of, like, a toaster spinning around, and they ran it through, and it looks like this high-end render of a toaster with, like, a little bit of, like, diffusion on the lens, and, like, there's a wood grain that wasn't there in the render on the counter. And, to me, that's the first time I've actually seen something that's like, oh, that is almost like a render engine. But, you still had to, like, design what you want the toaster to look like and model it. But because now the video controls it, you get a coherency that you didn't get before. And I've actually seen some motion graphicsy looking things come out of there too.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. So I agree with you that everyone should at least be aware of what these things do and try to balance the ideological, kind of disgust that may come up when you see these things, but also the pragmatic, I'm an artist, I have to pay the bills, and these things aren't going away. It's a tough one though, right?
It is. I mean, I think again, it'll be so much more clear if your goal is to rip off something that was specifically, one artist's viewpoint and the way that they visually represent stories and things like that. I think it'll be very obvious that you're being a hack. But if you're good at creating cool stuff, you're good at creating cool stuff.
Yeah. So now let's get into what you're doing these days. And, I think a lot of people will recognize you from VFX and Chill. My personal favorite is But with Raptors. And I wanted to ask you specifically about that one because, I run a company that's online. And so I understand the concept of content marketing, and you're making this really fun to watch stuff, but you're also using the tools that Red Giant sells and stuff. And I'm sure everyone's aware of that. But some of the stuff you do, there's not a straight line that's easy to draw between But with Raptors and Red Giant selling more plugins. So I'm curious, how did you pitch that? How did that come about?
Well, what I love about Maxon is that, I loved the culture coming from Red Giant into Maxon when we merged, and then, having ZBrush become part of the family. All of it is really cool because all of these people are artists who are really good in their own right at doing something. And so what's really cool about having all of those people together is that there's this really big mix of technical expertise, and there's this wonderful mix of artistry. And so within that, Maxon has been really, really wonderful at cultivating a creative culture internally where, people have a little bit of time to explore what you can do with the new tools that we're making. Seth Worley and I have VFX and Chill, and I invite you all to come watch VFX and Chill any Friday
It's awesome.
10 a.m. Pacific. But it's a very fun show where the two of us get to take all of our collective years of professional visual effects experience and just goof off with it. It's a really fun exercise because it's sort of like a visual effects improv show where it can fall into like game show challenge style episodes and things like that. And really, what it is we both have these ADHD minds that are firing off and like want to try a million different things. And what's cool about Maxon is that we have a million different products and little tools within all of those that I haven't personally explored all of them. 3 years into our run of VFX and Chill, we've gotten to explore a whole bunch of them, but there's still more to learn. I'm learning more from the trainers that I'm with. And so we started putting together the show that was supposed to be just about, visual effects. Every week we'll take a movie and recreate some shots from it. But that quickly spiraled into, hey, this is really our learning journey, and it's being documented in this show form, which is neat. And so we're learning how to do, redshift rendering. We're learning how to use ZBrush this week. We're surrounded by a bunch of people who are very good at what they do and have straightforward, easy tutorials about each of these functionalities. And then you have us who are trying to take them and just do something ridiculous with them. And so that led to us doing a trailer for Mission Impossible that I think was just inspired by the idea that I think one of the Jurassic World movies came out, and there's a shot where they're running around the rooftops forgive me, it's either in Italy or somewhere. And there's this rooftop jump that this raptor does that looks remarkably like a stunt that Tom Cruise did in one of the Mission Impossible films. And so we thought, wouldn't it be funny if we grabbed that trailer from Mission Impossible and replaced him with a velociraptor the entire time? And that bizarrely led into this weird, specific thing that we wanted to do, which was replace everybody with a velociraptor. And so we thought it would be fun to collect all these somewhere. So, it feels weird to have just Maxon sharing these on their channel or something like that. So we'll put them on their own little things so you don't have to be bothered by them if you're trying to really learn. But suddenly these silly videos where we are replacing people's faces with velociraptors started getting shared by millions of people. And the Twitter X account for them ballooned to over 100,000 followers. And it's really just a pet project of VFX and Chill. And what's kind of fun about it is that over time, we went from using a stock Raptor model that we got and moving to this amazing bespoke sculpt by Ian Robinson, IR Sculpts, who worked with Pixelogic and now is an amazing trainer for ZBrush with us. And he sculpted us a full Velociraptor body. And we have learned how to rig things over the course of the show. And so we've rigged up the skeleton, and we can even connect it to the facial capture software that Maxon has. And so in a way, just again to say, the show is really documenting our learning journey within this whole Maxon One suite of products. And because we're not too precious with what we're making, it can be a very silly, goofy result or a very silly endeavor to try to turn our faces into little Beetlejuice shrunken heads or to replace heads with velociraptors or to do some other nonsense. They all are just fun ways to use the software that hopefully suggests to other people you can go from zero all the way to a final thing within a few hours if you learn how to use these things. And so we're just sort of continuing that journey, and luckily Maxon is awesomely supportive of our silly memery in the pursuit of awareness for our tools.
That's so great. I love it. I remember one time, I forget which movie it was, but you posted something, you'd replaced, I don't know, the Terminator with a raptor or something. And I said, now do Howard the Duck. And I didn't realize you'd already done Howard the Duck. And oh man, so everyone go follow But With Raptors. It's amazing. So my last question, Hashi, and it's funny because we've kind of come full circle. You had this in hindsight, brilliant idea of, I like taking videos of my kid at Toys R Us. Hey, what if I put a lightsaber in their hand? And now you had this quirky idea. Wouldn't it be funny if we replaced Tom Cruise's head with a Velociraptor head? And both of those things went viral. And, going viral, it used to feel kind of like winning the lottery. And it was like, if it happens to you, great. It's not something you can aim for. You've managed to do it twice, and probably more than that if we look at some of the other things you've done. And it's definitely a marketing strategy now, not just for companies, but also for artists. I talk to a lot of artists that are freelance, and the bulk of their work comes from social media posts they make. And they don't necessarily go viral. They just post consistently, but sometimes something goes viral and ends up, on, Crunch Feed or something, just some, some website, and it gets 1 million views, and all of a sudden brands are calling them and asking them to do work. So do you have some kind of, I don't know what the word is, like a heuristic or something that you use when you're like, that idea is crazy, but I think people might like it? Or is it just, I think it's funny, I'm just going to put it out there, and you hit 1 out of 100?
I mean, the latter is probably more true. It would be easy to convince yourself, because you've done something several times, that you must be really good at it. But what I appreciate is that I'd worked for so many years with my wife as a creative partner, and now at Red Giant, I've worked with Seth Worley intimately in all these ridiculous, stupid projects. But it's so fun to be paired with other creative people that you can bounce chaotic ideas off of. And I think that somehow, between Seth Worley and Michael Zlapsky and me working, with this amazing host of Maxon trainers behind us who will teach us technically how to do anything that we don't know how to do, means that we have the bravery and courage to just make a lot of very stupid stuff. Seth Worley is one of the most talented humans I have ever conceived of in my life, and I'm so happy to work with him every week to do this very silly thing. And Seth has wonderful things to say about me, and we both have wonderful things to say about Michael and Michael's sense of what social media might respond to, or what would be a good direction to move the show in. And so we have found this really fun little machine that is able to produce stuff that, not consistently and not with any predictability, but we were able to get stuff out there that several times a year, millions of people will see. And it's really, really fun. And, there's no great formula to it other than, maybe all three of us kind of thought this will be cool, or this would be funny, or I would share that if I saw it.
Do you ever, I know I said last question, but I have one more follow-up. Do you ever feel like, I don't know, I mean, the stuff you post is so fun and goofy, and there's never any negativity to it. But do you ever have that feeling of ooh, I just put a raptor over Brad Pitt's head or something, and maybe people aren't going to, do you ever get a little bit of fear before releasing something that's just this kooky idea that it was only in your head, and now it's here, and now it's going to be out there and everyone can see it? Because I find sometimes that can actually be a good North Star. Oh, I'm actually a little afraid to show this. Maybe that's a good thing. Do you ever feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, and it only takes, a few, swings and complete misses on stuff that you do decide to put out there, that are really, really helpful for the learning experience of knowing it's easy to spiral and think, wait, I did one really successful thing online. Like, do I need to recreate that magic exactly somehow? Or should I just keep doing stuff that I'm having fun doing and hope that people like it too? And, getting in your head about, how many people are liking it, how many people are sharing it, or anything like that. And obviously our stated goal is to, make content that gets spread, outside the boundaries of our industry for other people to see them, and then slowly look inward to see, where did this all come from? The fear of doing something that may not be that great makes for some of the best conversations between, Seth, me, Michael about, usually Hashi is really obsessed with doing something ridiculous this week, and Seth will be very good at talking me back from the ledge of I see where you're going with that. How about? And funneling me towards something, or, we'll take Michael's guidance on oh, you know what? This whole community is very, interested in this thing at this moment. And that'll be, fodder for inspiration for what we do on the show that week or whatever. And so, it's a wonderful group of people, and we all balance each other out in a good way. So the fear is a little bit checked. If you fail at something, you have reassurance. And if you succeed at something, you get to all cheer together. And it's, I suggest everybody try to find, their own creative team.
I really want to thank Hashi for coming on and sharing so many awesome stories and tips. He's honestly one of my heroes. I think he's one of the most talented artist teachers out there, and Maxon is very fortunate to have him. Check out his show VFX and Chill on YouTube. The link will be in the description. And just Google Action Movie Kid to find all of his old viral videos, which I gotta say still hold up. I hope you got inspired by Hashi, and I hope you dug this episode. And if so, do us a solid, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the amazing guests that we have coming up, or any of our tutorials or news roundups. That's it for this one. I'll see you next time.